your go-to resource for U.S. immigration insights. We provide clear immigration news and information. Our platform provides a network of licensed attorneys who can answer your questions and guide you through the process. From visas to green cards, asylums to citizenships, immigrationquestion.com helps you to network with immigration attorneys so that you can move forward with confidence. Sign up today or download the app. Free registration, limited time offer. Stay tuned. We go live in 30 seconds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition webinar hosted by immigrationquestion.com, a networking platform and meeting ground where immigrants, families, attorneys, and licensed immigration attorneys come together to understand U.S. immigration policies and procedures better. I'm your host, GB Satusa. EB-2 NIW for researchers, strategies, trends, and what's getting approved is today's topic. Now, the EB-2 National Interest Waiver category offers a unique pathway for researchers and academics seeking permanent residence in the United States, a pathway that does not require employer sponsorship or the perm labor certification process. However, recent adjudication trends, interpretations, and evidentiary expectations have made strategic preparation more important than ever. Understanding how adjudicators evaluate proposed endeavors, national importance, and supporting documentation can make a significant difference in approval outcomes. To help us break this down, we are honored to be joined by Attorney Ingrid Perez and Attorney Elida Gerler, both experienced immigration attorneys who work extensively with employment-based petitions and research-focused NIW cases. Attorney Perez and Attorney Gerler, thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you on this important discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Now, before we begin, a quick reminder to our audience. ImmigrationQuestion.com is a public educational and networking platform. The information shared today is for general information purposes only and does not constitute individualized legal advice. And for those joining us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or any other platform, welcome. Please subscribe and share this session with researchers, academics, and professionals who may benefit from understanding the EB-2 NIW strategy and adjudication trends. Let's dive right in. Attorney Perez, recent agency guidance appears to shift how the National Interest Waiver standard is applied for researchers. Now, what current trends are you seeing in NIW approvals and denials, and how should researchers interpret these evolving adjudication patterns?
Thank you so much for having me, and I think that's a great question. I think that the first thing that is very important to confirm is that recent policy manual updates from January 2025 did not fundamentally change the three-prong analysis that every EB-2 national interest waiver self-petition must undergo. We have the three-prong analysis that's been established since 2016 in matter of Danisar, and that still stands. What has changed is the way that USCIS officers are instructed to apply those standards, and really what USCIS is doing with the policy manual is clarifying uncertainties in ways that immigration officers approach these cases. So what we're seeing here is a tightening up of adjudication standards. And for researchers, what is important to understand is that an NIW petition must be presented in the framework of the National Interest Waiver to USCIS. It's very important that petitioners understand what is a proposed endeavor, how to show they are well positioned, and tell a cohesive story that at the end of the day will persuade the immigration officer who's making the ultimate decision in the case.
All right. Now, many researchers pursue NIW because of perceived flexibility compared with perm-based employment green cards. Can you break down the core eligibility criteria for EB-2 NIW for researchers, including the proposed endeavor and national benefit, and what common mistakes applicants make?
Absolutely. The very first step is qualifying for EB-2 classification. That is through an advanced degree or the equivalent. So researchers with a master's degree or a PhD degree can qualify for EB-2 classification. Another way to qualify for EB-2 classification is also through a bachelor's degree and 5 years of progressive post-bachelor experience in the profession. So that is the very first step. The next step is defining the the endeavor that's in the national interest. And for that, it's really important to be familiar and knowledgeable with the DANASAR framework. We try here as best as possible for our clients to frame research-focused endeavors in terms of the national interest. We help our clients do that, and we take an individualized approach with every case. The next part that I think researchers should really be aware, or the next thing that researchers really should be aware of, is that a common misconception is that citations is everything. At our office, we do not necessarily approach every case as a cookie cutter template. We like to look at the case and the petitioner as a whole to develop a compelling story. So if you're actively researching, even if maybe your record of citation is not the highest compared to other researchers, you may still have a very approvable case. Of course, every case requires its own individual assessment and individual strategy. But one mistake that I think is very important for researchers not to make is to think that their citations is everything, because it's not. There's a way to present a case of immigration that is still approvable.
Yeah. Now, when presenting academic credentials, publications, citations, and conference presentations, what types of evidence tend to make the strongest impact in an NIW petition? And how should researchers organize this documentation for maximum clarity?
That's a great question. And I think the most important part here is that every piece of evidence should speak for itself. You should be submitting information and documentation to immigration that an immigration officer can easily review and understand what it means, right? So in the case of a researcher, the very first step, or any applicant actually, the very first step is making sure that you are supplying immigration with your degrees, your transcripts. If you have a foreign degree, making sure that you have a degree equivalency consultation to ensure that you meet that threshold EB-2 classification requirement. As far as everything else in the national, to argue an NIW case, you want to submit objective evidence of your citation record. You want to submit evidence of funding that you may have received, evidence of your citation record if you have it, or peer reviews if you have done. Of course, letters, testimonial letters, expert opinion letters, are the more subjective type of evidence, and that you have to select and choose carefully. I always say that no letter should sound alike. If you're going to be submitting letters, make sure that they are for a very specific purpose and that they are helping tell a compelling story for your case. I find that letters oftentimes helps us argue that an endeavor is in a national interest, or help argue that a person is well positioned to pursue their endeavor in the United States. So it's very important also to ensure that your evidence is presented in a clear manner, ensuring that you edit down your evidence as well, and not submitting things that may be irrelevant, that will end up hurting a case.
Thanks for those insights, Attorney. Now, Attorney Gerler, some applicants struggle to articulate how their work rises to national importance. From your experience, what kinds of impact narratives or real-world applications are adjudicators most responsive to in research-focused NIW cases?
I want to start off by just saying thank you for having me. And this is actually a great question in relation to national importance, because RFE challenges to specifically towards national importance have been on the rise based off of patterns that I am seeing and Ingrid is seeing as well. But to start, I mean, national importance is basically the problem concept that is used to analyze the significance of the client's proposed endeavor to the, or I guess their future work to the United States. And the thing that's most important is that in order to analyze this part of the prong one framework, you need to, applicants, specifically petitioners, need to have a clearly defined proposed endeavor. the proposed endeavor is specifically really important for them to be able to understand exactly what work they're going to be doing in the future, to then be able to analyze why it has national importance to the United States. Specifically, what I see with petitioners who struggle with demonstrating national importance is that they talk about the field and how their field is important. And we will also see this in RFEs where the officers will push back and state that the petitioner is simply stating the importance of their field rather than the importance of their work. So it's super important to be able to establish that nexus. And I think the most clear and proper way to go about it in terms of maximizing the chances for meeting that specific national importance half of the first prong is aligning it with federal government agency goals and objectives. So for example, if you have a client that is working on is a molecular biologist or working on genetics with CRISPR technology for cancer research, you would want the petitioner to be able to look at government initiatives. For example, under the Biden administration, this was the Cancer Moonshot Initiative, and basically tying the proposed endeavor into the importance that's underlined in these government initiatives and programs. It really depends on the administration at the time and the executive orders and funding that's put into these programs. But generally speaking, we want to make sure that the proposed endeavor is clear enough to basically allow the officer to understand what exactly the future work is and to be able to understand and create that nexus between what the endeavor is and why it's nationally important. And instead of just stating broad facts or talking about the field, specifically creating that connection between the prong one national importance half and the proposed endeavor.
All right. Now, letters of recommendation are a key component of many NIW filings. What distinguishes a persuasive letter of support from one that does little to reinforce a case? And how should researchers select and prepare letter writers?
So in terms of letters, this is something that I think many people struggle with. And what I always like to tell petitioners is that we want letter writers to discuss the petitioner's work, not them personally. So letters should be written thinking about the overall legal framework. And I always tell clients, why are we writing this letter and what are we providing it for? Generally, weaker letters talk about leadership capabilities, job duties, and responsibilities without connecting it to the proposed endeavor and demonstrating why they're well positioned to advance the proposed endeavor or why their work may have national importance. I think in terms of researcher letters, I recommend using one dependent writer and 2 to 3 independent letter writers. And I think the main distinguishing factor that I observe with these letters is the simple praise that some of them give rather than explaining the background of the work within the overarching legal framework of DONASAR and the USCIS policy manual. So I always tell clients to help support prong one in the NIW portion, or just depending on what you're providing the letter for, just keep in mind the overarching framework and why you are including that letter, as opposed to speaking about, your accomplishments and general praise.
Now, for applicants whose work is interdisciplinary or does not fit the traditional academic molds, what strategies can help bridge gaps in eligibility and demonstrate that the proposed endeavor serves the national interest?
In terms of, this is what me and Ingrid call industry professional cases, where they do not have your standard citations, but they are very intelligent in their field, and they have years and years of experience, and they're very accomplished. And what differentiates them is the types of evidence that they have versus the general researcher, where the researcher may have citations and peer review and funding. These clients generally have more collaboration, implementation. If they're creating a product, we like to show that they're commercializing it, that it's being implemented. A lot of these cases tend to be software engineers, pilots, or entrepreneurs. Depending on the type of case, the strategy obviously changes because these cases are not your one size fits all. You have to bridge the gap and tell a comprehensive story based off of what the client's degrees are in, their experiences in, and to be able to show the officer that they have a broader impact, larger impact, way beyond their employer or current employment, because that's something that we see as well in RFEs where they conflate the current employment with the endeavor. But in terms of case strategy, it really depends on the client. Letters they're a huge part of these cases, where they don't have that, where petitioners may not have the standard types of evidence that a researcher may. So depending on their background, it just depends. But generally speaking, personal statements, letters, and any evidence of implementation, collaboration, and so on and so forth, generally suffices based off of the petitioner's background. But it all depends on who the client is, what they're doing, and what their background is. So
Thanks, Attorney, for those insights. Truly interesting. Now, Attorney Perez, looking ahead, Immigration Services appears to be signaling specific priorities or evidence expectations for employment-based cases. What practical planning advice would you give researchers preparing an NIW petition now in order to anticipate adjudicator concerns and avoid avoidable RFEs?
That's a great question. I think that, compared to what like Elida was explaining about the industry professional type of cases that we kind of like to categorize them in our office and in our minds to help us develop a strategy for, these different types of petitioners. I think that researchers overall are still in a better footing than maybe other petitioners who are submitting NIW petitions. And the reason for that is because their research tend to have broad scope, right? Not only should their work have broader implications, the work should also have broader implications to the field as a whole. So a researcher may not only be advancing scientific knowledge, they would also in turn be advancing their field, right? Growing, expanding, and sharing their knowledge. So I think in terms of the NIW framework, researchers are still in a very good footing. And of course, every case is individualized. Adjudication standards vary widely within, immigration and immigration officer. We still see strong cases getting RFEs. So RFEs should just be baked into the process now. It should be an expectation. Something that can still be overcome, but a lot of times we just have to manage clients' expectations and let them know that, if we get an RFE, it's nothing to be surprised. Of course, we have to handle it, deal with it, but it is just sort of baked in the process now. So I think for individuals who are preparing NIW petitions, one thing that's very important to consider is timing, right? If you're currently engaged in a PhD program, you may be graduating soon, you may want to think about timing. Timing is very important because in the future, if you are not inside of the United States, or maybe you're unable to secure a research position, right, that will be reflected in your NIW petition. So a lot of times, people who are currently enrolled, engaged in research, actively researching with recent publications, those people should consider timing, number one, for sure. Number two, I think that it is important also for early career researchers or maybe more established researchers to start thinking about the network that they may tap into to support them with this petition. Sometimes we can get away with filing an NIW petition without support letters, right? That can be part of our strategy. Other times we want to include letters. So maintaining your network and so that you can get help from those people or support from your professional network when you're ready to file an NIW. And the other thing is, thinking about the NIW as sort of a long or just a part of your immigration strategy. There are a lot of people in the United States who face significant backlogs that will still benefit from having a national interest waiver petition filed on their own behalf, right? Whether through an employer or a self-petition, particularly nationals from India or China. Even if the backlogs to get a green card from the NIW can be significantly long, having an I-140 approved will secure a priority date if the individual is able later to maybe do an EB-1A. Or I always like to think also that having I-140 approved, helps you secure additional years on H-1B. H-1B, you have it for up to 6 years. So having an I-140 approved will help you continue your H-1B if you need to. So I think those are just, some practical considerations that everybody, but specifically researchers, can consider in their immigration journey.
Right. Thank you both for those valuable insights. Now, for everyone watching, this discussion about EB-2 NIW for researchers is not meant to create confusion or unrealistic expectations, but to encourage strategic preparation and clarity. Employment-based adjudications change over time, and understanding evidentiary standards, and decision trends helps applicants prepare strong, well-documented petitions rather than receiving requests for evidence after filing. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. ImmigrationQuestion.com is a networking platform where users can ask immigration-related questions at no cost and engage with participating attorneys. We're also proud to share that ImmigrationQuestion.com is BBB accredited and ISO certified, reflecting our commitment to transparency, accountability, community education, and security. Attorney Perez and Attorney Gerla, based on your experience working with employment-based applicants, how does ImmigrationQuestion.com help immigrants and immigration attorneys such as yourselves?
I think this is a great platform to connect individuals who are looking for reliable information with the information that they're seeking. I find self-petitioners to be some of the most informed clients that we have. They come to us already very knowledgeable about the process, and that definitely helps. And I think that immigrationquestions.com definitely helps with that.
I would say the same in terms of connecting petitioners to attorneys that want to help. And also, this is a very long process. It's an investment, and being able to find the right attorney that you're comfortable with is very, very important in the whole process. So I think that any platform, especially immigration.com, is doing just that. It's helping people find the right attorneys that they trust and feel comfortable with, who can answer their questions and make their nerves more calm.
Thank you for those thoughts, attorneys. Now, before we move into our live Q&A, let's address an important question. What is one common misconception about EB-2 NIW for researchers that you believe applicants should clarify to avoid weak filings or unnecessary denials?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
All right. What is one common misconception about EB-2 NIW for researchers that you believe applicants should clarify to avoid weak filings or unnecessary denials?
I think in terms of this, it goes back to citations for researchers. There's no binary citation threshold that puts a 20 plus citation record and differentiates it from a 350 plus citation record. We see this in RFEs where they'll question the citation evidence and the citation count, saying that it doesn't show that it's impactful. But I always tell petitioners and people looking for EB-2 NIWs for researchers that there is no such thing as a binary citation threshold. Specifically, I've worked with clients that have had one citation all the way up to 1,500 citations. So it just shows the range that there really is no right or wrong number of citations in terms of EB-2 NIWs. It's the whole picture. Does the person have peer review, funding, letters, collaboration, implementation, so on and so forth? Because citations are only one part of the whole equation. They're not the whole equation, and I think that's something to keep in mind.
Right. If you're just joining us, we've been speaking with attorneys Ingrid Perez and Elida Grilla on EB2 NIW for researchers, strategies, trends, and what's getting approved. We're now moving into our live Q&A session. This is your opportunity to ask general questions and hear educational insight from licensed immigration attorneys. Drop those questions or call us live at 516-703-3483 and we'll take as many as possible. Right. Can I apply for EB2 NIW without getting a job offer first?
The answer is yes, you can file an EB-2 national interest waiver petition without a job offer. The NIW does not require a job offer or a labor certification, and actually the national interest waiver is waiving that very same requirement.
All right. Is it better to have international recognition or US-based collaborations to apply for NIW?
I would say that there is either or. That would be my answer, is either or, because international recognition, if we're talking about the UN, if we're talking about well-known organizations, that's good evidence to demonstrate that you're well positioned to advance your proposed endeavor in the United States. I also do include US-based collaborations where, for example, the client has funding evidence from a institution that is prestigious, such as the NIH, the NSF. So I think that depending on where the international recognition is from and based off of what the US-based collaboration is from, it really depends. But I think there's a case to be made for both of those.
All right. Are research citations necessary for EB2 NIW approval?
So
Sorry.
it's okay. We can take this one on together. So our position at our office is that research citations are not necessary for NIW approvals, although of course they do help. Of course they help. It's very important to have a holistic and thorough and comprehensive approach to an NIW. If you are presenting your NIW as a researcher, having citations definitely helps. But it also depends on where you are in your career. If you're an early career researcher, you may not have a lot of citations, right? If you've been researching for a while, you may have a long record of citations. Or if you've researched a while ago and you stopped researching, and then you're presenting your case to USCIS, I would argue that your citation record may help, but we will want to address why perhaps you have stopped your research, or these are all things that are very important to address in an NIW petition, because these are the questions that the immigration officer will have.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page as Ingrid. She said right exactly what I was about to say.
All right. All right. Thank you. All right. What is the mistake that EB2 NIW applicants make that causes RFEs or denials?
Oof, this is a tough question, but I would say filing without an attorney. And that is because there is a lot to the legal framework and experience and knowledge that we have and see. And when we have petitioners come and, explain that they self-filed, there's a lot of room for error. And I always tell clients it's worth the investment because we see these RFEs daily, monthly. We know the framework like the back of our hands. We know how to push back on RFE claims. And we know what evidence is going to satisfy the officer's analysis. And, our goal is obviously to get approvals and we always have the client's best interest in mind. So I think using an attorney is one of the biggest things that I would advise.
Yeah. All right. If I already have an employer sponsoring me for EB2, Can I still file NIW separately?
Yes, you can. There are many petitioners who have perm or sponsorship through the labor certification, through the perm process, and an employer that will file an I-140 to get EB-2 classification. You can still pursue your own national interest waiver petition. If you have an earlier priority date, you can keep your earlier priority date from a previously approved I-140. So you absolutely can do that.
All right. Now, attorneys, recent reports indicate that DHS has halted global entry processing amid the ongoing partial government shutdown. Global Entry, a trusted traveler program, is widely used by international travelers, including employment based applicants, to facilitate expedited entry into the United States. Attorney Perez and Attorney Gerla, when researchers and employment based applicants hear about service interruptions like the suspension of global entry processing during a government shutdown, how should they interpret these developments? Do operational pauses in certain DHS programs typically signal broader adjudication slowdowns for immigrant petitions, or are these processes generally handled separately?
So I think it's very important for everybody who's, thinking about immigrating to the United States to have a basic understanding of how the system works. Department of Homeland Security is sort of the umbrella that houses various different government agencies that deal with various parts of immigration. So we have Customs and Border Protection, we have Immigration Customs Enforcement, we have USCIS, and all these other agencies that are sort of under this big umbrella. So for a program like a global entry, which is something that expedites entry of people in the United States, just processing them at the airport, at the border, this is not something that has anything to do with how USCIS, a different agency altogether, will adjudicate petitions and applications. Only USCIS will sort of decide how that is done, and that varies widely within administrations. I mean, there's always different priorities, and we see these changes all the time. So it's important to keep in mind that just because something is happening over here doesn't necessarily mean that something else would be impacted as well. But of course, it's good to be aware because these may signal bigger trends. But I would say that right now, this is not a cause for concern for employment-based petitioners.
Yeah, I would say the two are independent from themselves, so same sentiment.
All right. Thank you to everyone who joined us for the special edition webinar. And thank you, Attorney Perez and Attorney Gerla, for sharing your knowledge and practical guidance today. You can always visit immigrationquestion.com to ask immigration-related questions, stay informed about policy updates, and register for upcoming live events. If you missed any part of today's discussion, the replay will be available on Spotify soon. Just search Borderless Talk by immigrationquestion.com. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday at our next live session. Until then, stay informed, stay prepared, and stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.